Okay, so thanks. So with that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Tanja Poppelreuter, who is the Director of Postgrad Admissions for our School of Science, Engineering and Environment. So Tanja,
thank you so much, Bill, for the introduction and for organising this session. I'm just grabbing my phone, not because I want to text or take a phone, but so I take time and I'm not going over time. So, yes, as Bill already said, so welcome, hello, thank you for having me. I'm Tanja. So I'm the Director of PGR Studies in the school. I'm looking at the moment after about 260 PGRs. PGRs is predominantly doctoral students, but also MPhil and MRes students. So this is an overview of what actually it means to be a postgraduate researcher, how does it particularly work in Salford, and then we look a little bit about what it costs and how you get hopefully a scholarship or any some other support so that you can afford it. I'm planning to speak about 45-50 minutes, so then it's 10 minutes for questions. If you have questions, maybe make a note of it, because in my experience, if you stop and go, we're here till 4 o'clock. So I just want to keep it contained so that it's not a conflict with Bill's second part of this lecture. So first of all, what are the research degrees in C that we are offering? So the biggest part of the cohort are full-time PhD students. You can also opt for a part-time PhD, that might be better for your situation. Then it would be 5 years instead of 3 years. We have split-side PhDs, that means that somebody works and studies on their research abroad and is only for a short period of time in the UK. That means split between 2 locations. Then we have distance learning PhD that's online, so you are getting access to our online provisions of programs and library and the things we offer, but you're never really on campus. That is not appropriate for all subjects in C, especially if you need a laboratory. You know, that of course would not make sense. So anybody who has a wet lab, for example, in biomedicine, for example, they don't accept distance learners, but this is really up to the subject matter and the supervisor. And then we have a Master of Philosophy or an MPhil, which is quite distinct to a PhD. I get over that in a second, what that means, and to a smaller extent, MSc by research students. Those are mostly within our natural sciences, so that's a research master's. They all have in common they don't have any taught component. So you are an independent researcher working on a research project together with 1 or 2 supervisors. So there is no modules, no exams or essay submissions or tests. Instead, you're working on a thesis that is submitted at the end of the period of time allocated for either the MPhil, MRes, or the PhD. So far, so good. Everybody's kind of smiling and nodding, good. So why bother? You know, because you're already at university for several years, so why bother going on and continuing this? The most important advice I can give you, if you're toying with the idea to become an independent researcher, do a PhD or MPhil, is have a plan. Know why you're doing this. Have a goal for it, and then it makes it much more pertinent to do this. So have a plan in terms of, I want to be an academic, therefore I need to have a PhD. I want to work for a particular company, but on that level, therefore I need to have a PhD to be eligible and a desirable candidate. Or I want to focus on this new and upcoming little tiny research field in my area that I'm really fascinated about, and it will make me an expert and therefore a desirable candidate for a job. So think about what's the game plan for it. If you have that, you know, the Higher Education Statistics Agency, I guess there is something like this, I was surprised too, says to us that it increases the chances of getting a better and higher paid job by 20%. That's pretty good. So of course you can get this job by working up the ranks, but it might take a while. So, and also 20% is 20%, it's not 50%, you know, that would be better. So nobody has a crystal ball. So think about it, what is your chances in your field? And the best way to do this is to talk to your academics here that you have at your fingertips, so Bill, and yes, Bruno, hello Bruno, and think and take their advice. You know, is this the field that is needing staff in these companies in the short term? There is 4% likelihood to get even into a managerial role, which I thought was quite amazing, because usually that takes more experience, but it's possible. And then the good news about for the international students with us is that we have changes in the visa structure, so international students can now bring dependents into the country, so that wasn't always the case. And also you're then eligible as an international student after you're finishing your degree to stay for 3 more years having a settle-in period. So that is changed, and I'm really happy about this, because that doesn't mean you lose your visa the moment you've graduated. So for the international students, it's very good. So, and the other reason why people do a PhD or an MPhil is because you become an expert in a very small and focused field that you're passionate about. So if you're passionate about and really interested in learning how things work, learning and finding out newness, that's something that is a time that is really, really precious. I think we're all the academics I know, they look back at their time as a PhD student as the only time really unfettered by constraints, where they really only could focus on their research. So, and they wish themselves back to it a lot of times. I know I do. Wouldn't I love to have 3 more years to write a book or 2? You are, and I'm not exaggerating, especially in the field of acoustics, you are going to be, if you do this, a part of a world-leading research environment. So, I mean, we have some really quite excellent facilities in this school for acoustics, and I see Bruno nodding, so thank you for confirming. And that is, of course, very, very desirable as well, because you can do your research with equipment and in labs that are top of their game. And if that's not enough, you know, it does widen your horizon, and it's pretty fun. So I teach in architecture. I'm an associate professor in architecture, and I'm the happiest in an archive. I know, it's bizarre, but that's where I find the newness for my field. And I assume that's similar for Bill and Bruno being in the lab. It's where the happy place is. I know we've been quick. So I want to speak a little bit about the 2 main programs that we offer, the MPhil and then the PhD, just to talk you through what it is, what it entails, and how we do it, how we get you there at sea. So start with the MPhil. MPhil means Master of Philosophy. So that is, again, an advanced research degree dedicated to completing an independent research project. Again, as I said, no modules, no exams. You submit your thesis at the end. Again, it can increase your employability, and if you're on the fence, toying with the idea of a PhD, but not quite sure if it's the right path for you, you could enroll first in our MPhil program, have a chat with your supervisor, and transfer into the 2nd year of a PhD. So you don't lose time. So you can just submit your work as a transfer submission, and then go smoothly into the 2nd year. So I think that's a pretty neat arrangement. What do you need to do? So you have 1 year of writing and researching. The maximum amount of words we accept is 50,000 words research thesis. So I say maximum in capital letters, because it's not about the word count, it's about the quality of the research project that you're writing. So, and the word count that is normal, typical, is very different from subject area to subject area. I would expect somebody in English or in history to produce up to 50,000 words, but I would expect somebody in my biomedicine who's sitting in the laboratory for long periods of time to produce much less text. Again, it's not about the word count, it's about the quality of the thesis, right? So let's keep that in mind. It's, as I said, it's a 12-month research and writing period for full-time students. It's twice as long for part-time students. And then a 12-month examination period. So you might want to think, what does that even mean? What are we doing in 12 months examination? I'm going to die if I'm examined for 12 months. So that sounds a bit scary when it isn't. So the way it works is, because we don't have a grading system like you have in your modules between 1 and 100, and you get marks between 50 and 70 and to get your classifications. We don't have that anymore. All you get, you submit a thesis to an internal and external examiner. They read it, they comment on it, and I would want to say 98, 99% of the cases, they come back with suggestions for corrections. And they can ask you for 3 months or 6 months period of corrections, depending on how many corrections they require. Or if they are really unhappy, they can ask you for a resubmission of the thesis. So there's different ways in what examiners can ask. We label that as A1, congratulations, you're an MPhil, or congratulations, you're a doctor, I don't need anything from you. That happens so rarely. If it happens, everybody knows about it. A colleague of mine used to say, an A1 immediately going through without corrections through graduation is as rare as unicorn poop. So I've never seen unicorn poop, so it must be very rare. Something silly jokes, little children. So that doesn't happen. So expect A2, 3 months, or A3, 6 months, and even sometimes resubmission. So in these three elements, we are 90% of the students are situated. And therefore, you're looking at the examiners reading your thesis. That takes them about 6 weeks. Then they come back saying corrections, 3 months, you're out the door after 1 year, 6 months. Or they say correction to 6 months, and then we look at more of a closer to a year examination period. Making sense? Great. So you usually don't have a Vibro-acoustics exam. So Vibro-acoustics is a Latin term that means you're defending your thesis in an oral examination. The MPhil usually doesn't have it unless the examiners want one. So that is up to the examiners. But I haven't come across this for the MPhil yet. It's unique in C, so I'm quite proud of this MPhil setup that we have, because you know, the way I was thinking about this when I started as a PGR director, thinking, hang on a second, our students are very much supported in the undergrad. You know, they're given every support that we can muster, and they hold their hand a lot in first year, and they let it go successively in second and third year. But when they come into the master, they still get a very rigorous structure with their modules and with examinations and deadlines and so on. If you take all of that structure away, it's a little bit like pulling the rug from underneath you. So we have to have some sort of transitional term where we say, okay, this is how you do it, and then we let you free to do your independent free research, where you don't have the structure given by us and you create your own structure. So we've implemented a transitional period, and that in integrated training sessions that align with formative draft submission. So what that means is, well, part of your research is a literature review. So we're not expecting that every MPhil or also PhD student knows exactly what I mean when I say literature review. And so we have a session, we explain what literature review is, we give examples, we discuss it, and then 2 weeks later you submit a draft literature review to your supervisor, just to see, am I understanding this correctly? Is this right? So that's not marked. and it's also, there's no word count to it. It's an opportunity to learn and to fall into a structure, into a discipline. So we're not policing it. It's really up to the supervisor and student team to observe these formative submissions or not. But it helps you to get the session. It helps you to digest, okay, this is what that means when people talk about the literature review, so now I do it, and then I get feedback. And then I move on. The next one is maybe research design. Oh, what does that even mean, research design? Okay, there's a class, we explain what is research design, then it's a formative submission, fine. All of this ends then up to a learning agreement at the end of 3 months, and we are expecting roughly 10,000 words submission then. With 3 months, 10,000 words doesn't sound too much if that's what you do full time, right? But it should be guided and it should have a structure to it. And that's basically this transitional program that we produced for the MPhil. From then, the moment you submitted your learning agreement, you're just at the mercy of your supervisor. So you're entitled really to have one supervision meeting with your supervisor a month. Most supervisors see their students more often, and I haven't come across a single supervisor who's not available when the student needs them, especially if you're in a lab. You're around each other's feet all the time anyway. You can also meet with me if you have any questions or concerns. So I have consultation hours, I call it, every Wednesday in the C building. You're eligible to get a desk to work on. You get, I have a slide for that. You get all sorts of perks. I'll tell you later when I'm looking at that slide so I don't forget the details. So is that giving you enough information about the MPhil? So how we're setting it up. So the biggest difference between the MPhil and the PhD is not just the time, but also the agenda, really. So the MPhil is a research degree, but it doesn't necessarily have to produce originality. It often does, but it's not part of the expectation. The PhD does. So the PhD is the highest degree that the UK universities bestow upon an individual. Aside from the Dr. Lit, which is something you might get at the end of your career. Bill, I'm looking at you. So if you have a bunch of publications, like from the floor to here, then you can apply for another kind of lifetime awards, really. And that's it. So that's the research degrees the UK has. So the PhD is awarded to students who complete an original thesis that offers a significant new contribution to knowledge in their subject. So the keywords are here: original, significant, and new. So it has to be not regurgitated material that you can read anywhere else, but you have to identify a research gap, a knowledge gap in a very focused little field, and contribute to that. And it needs to be original. So something that your findings, your material that you are finding with the methodology you have applied to finding the material, and that is new, that is original, that is also significant. Not a teeny tiny little data set, but something that you and your supervisor together decide is significant. So if that's a bit abstract, it's because I'm speaking for all subject matter in C, and it's a bit difficult for me to think of an example in acoustics. Maybe if you're thinking, let me think. If you're thinking about, I can't think of something on top of my head. But, Bill and Bruno can sort you out about an example. PhD qualifications available to all subjects, so you don't discriminate. So anybody can apply. You just need to have a degree of 2-1 or first. So you need to get to that level. The quality then that you produce in your PhD in these 3 years should be worthy to be published in international recognized scientific journals. And we encourage all of our students to start publishing while they are studying. And because it helps you to become known in your field, and it makes you also a desirable candidate for job applications that you have. And it's also in the interest of your supervisors to publish findings from their research. One way of doing this is, if you're a bit shy and unsure about it, is through conferences, especially conferences that have proceedings. But I would always caution you to first always talk to your supervisor about where is a good and the best home for your research, because you can't publish and then you realize maybe not the best journal, and you know that there needs to be some knowledge and understanding about what is a good home for your research. So if you're looking at what is in the thesis, in the nutshell, in the most simplest terms, you have a comprehensive introductory chapter, which is in the introduction, setting the scene, introducing to the cast of characters, then reviews the literature, not just summarize the literature, really reviews the literature. What is the literature saying? From what angle is the literature approaching your topic? What is convincing? What is less convincing? What is the development of talking about your topic in the last X amount of years? So that's what the literature review does. And then at the end of the literature review, you typically arrive at the research questions, at the aims, so what is it you want to do, and the objectives, how are you going to do it? What technologies do you apply? What ways of looking you are applying? And who has written about this as well? So that's aims and objectives. And then they get intermediaries, write your methodology, do your data collection, your data discussion and conclusion. So the structure of a PhD is relatively standard in most fields, you know, which is a relief really, because you don't have to make it up yourself, you just follow. However, the trick is into doing this, because it's, again, your new significant contribution and originality in your field. So that's the hard work. Yeah. Typically, the length of a PhD is between 50 and 80,000 words. Again, always quality over quantity. We don't accept a PhD if it's longer than 100,000 words, and I would say just go back and do a little bit more editing. So that's because also we need to protect our students that they don't produce 200,000 words, because it needs to be in the shape of a PhD, not something else. You know, I mean, it's also protecting you and your time and energy. It's a 3-year writing period and a 1-year examination period, the same as I just explained on the example of the MPhil. And there, a Vibro-acoustics at the end. Now, the Vibro-acoustics is about 2.5 to 3.5 hours long. It's an oral defense. In that room with you would be, so you would be there would be an internal chair that somebody who has nothing to do with you have never seen, who comes from a completely different subject area, but they are the master of ceremony. They are mostly there to make sure that everything is run smoothly, that everybody's nice and collegiate, that you have coffee in the room. So that's the internal chair. Then you would have a supervisor, or sometimes both supervisors in there, an internal examiner, somebody from our group of colleagues, and an external examiner. The external examiner is usually leading the defense. In my experience, I do the internal chairing quite a lot. And in my experience, it's really a fascinating discussion every time, where the external is asking probing questions about chapters, about the literature, about the data collection and analysis, and with the goal to enhance the text. Not to put you down or to grade you down or anything, but just finding out what is it actually in the essence that was done, and where can we find a significant new contribution. Because students are often a little bit too humble and don't really sing and dance about their contributions in the way they should, because this is yours. You did this. Nobody should be able to overlook it. And so a good examination, in my experience, is those that say, oh, is this yours? Have you done this? Are those your findings? Yes. Well, you need to say this. Say this more clearly. You know, so edit this a little bit. And then, as I said, 99.99% of 100 times, they say, go back and redo parts of it again and submit it again in 3-6 months to see whether it comes out a little bit better. So that's the Vibro-acoustics. It's not a defense in kind of a martial arts situation. It's more of a conversation about the research and its validity, rigor, and novelty. So 3 years is a long time, and if you are like me, we're all together competing in the World Championship of Procrastination, as good and bad as everybody else. So in order to avoid this and have a big sobbing mess at the end, we have some milestones, we call it. So I've mentioned the learning agreement. Then we have a self-evaluation and annual progress report that both the student and the supervisor must fill out. You have to fill it out, otherwise you don't get a progression code. And they then come on my desk, and then you get an email and they say, I thought you were unhappy about this, so what can I do to help you? The formal assessments, there's two. There's the one is the IA, the internal assessment after the 9th to the 11th month. And then the internal evaluation at the end of the 2nd year. So the first one is the literature review, the research question, the aims and the objectives, to demonstrate, is that person an expert in their field? Have they done the reading and researching in their first 9 months to really showcase they know exactly what they're talking about? So what is the expectation there is this introductory chapter, what I mentioned, the cast of character and laying of the land, plus the literature review in most instances, about 10,000 words. So we give you ample time to really immerse yourself in the literature. It depends on your progress and also on the topic that you have. Some students even produce some methodology already at that point. The second examination is 40,000 words. Up to 40,000 words. So that's much more substantial, and that's where then the data collection is expected to be submitted with some sort of, with the methodology, with the ethics, and with some sort of indication of findings. So that's a very substantial piece of work in the IE at the end of the 2nd year, because in the 3rd year you finish it up to submit at the end of 3rd year. So we're fast for good. Any questions? Am I plowing through this too quickly? No questions online? Okay, good, because I can't see the online students. So what do we do in C? So here's what I and my colleagues do. So there's 3 of us. There's 3 PGR directors, because there's 260 students. So we're separating the world of PGR among the 3 of us. So I'm the PGR director. I'm looking mostly after the progression that the students are looking after well-being. If somebody is sick or has an issue, interruptions, extension, things like this. I'm looking after the development groups, which I mentioned in a second as acoustic specific. And I have a budget, so if you want money for a computer program, or you need a specific laptop, or somebody wants in aero engineering wants to build a standalone complex. I've christened it, wants to build a supercomputer, and then we talk about how much it costs and whether we can support you. So I will do anything I can do, but to do that, but I just need from you a justification. Why does this, is this for gaming or is this for studying? Things like this. We have all sorts of requests. The latest one yesterday came, somebody needs an ergonomic chair because they have a disability. Of course, you get a desk, you need to have a comfortable chair. We do a lot of training that is SEE specific. We also have academic talks that my colleague Jelka is organizing, which is a high-level research presentation. We have invited guests from all over the country. to speak to our students and our academic colleagues. You have the opportunity to share your own session on your field of research at our International Postgraduate Research Conference. The next one is this May. I will disseminate a call to attend any of the sessions so you can have a look at what that is. The university has a conference as well, which is Spark, but it's very, very different. Ours is really international, so we have people from all over the world attending that conference. Spark is just our home grassroots conference where you can just try out how it feels to give a presentation and get used to the sound of your own voice presenting. So that's very unthreatening. IPGRC is trying to emulate international conferences, international postgrad conferences that you find in other places as well, and it publishes proceedings that are peer-reviewed. So that's an opportunity. Again, before you do that, discuss that with your supervisor whether it's the best move for you. So that's what we do in C, at least some of it. The other thing, what we have is a doctoral school. The doctoral school looks after the whole of the university, and they create Spark, this grassroots conference. Then we have Ask Us and the Student Union. So there's general things that you can ask them for, like writing a letter for your landlord and things like this. Or if you are not a native English speaker, we also have LEAP, which is Learning English for Academic Purposes. And they have been really helpful when it comes to supporting PGRs as well. Now, if I have convinced you, if you're all gung-ho about becoming an MPhil or a doctoral student, I'd like you to stop and think for a moment. If you're interested in doing this, are you doing this for the right reason? So is this the best choice for you? So if you have a career plan, if you have a plan about what you want to do after the PhD, and the PhD or the MPhil is pivotal to achieving this plan, yes, definitely do it. Because if you have a plan that extends past the 3 years, you will find yourself much more motivated to doing it. If you're passionate about reading, writing, finding out things, being in the lab, doing research on acoustics, if that's where your heart is, where your happy place is, yes, definitely. And also if you're really dedicated to spending 3 more years, actually almost 4, of your life on this, without having a regular, high-ish income, yeah, yes, as well. So make this decision maybe after speaking with your family and loved ones and see what they think, especially if you have family, what that means to them, so that you are really the happy camper you should be while you're going through this process. You should say no. There's a couple of flippant comments that I put in there. So if you don't know what else to do, and if this is a stopgap, it's probably not the best choice. If you don't have a plan, think about what's your plan. If you say, I always wanted to do a PhD, that's alarm for me. We interview every applicant, and I always ask them the question, why do you want to do the PhD? And when the answer is, I always wanted to do a PhD, I'm a bit worried. Is that really good enough reason? I always wanted to have blonde hair. I would say rethink that, if that's the best answer you come. There should be a plan. There should be an exit strategy after that. And also, yeah, just because I want to have the letters DR in front of my name is similarly not a very good idea. Really, maybe not. Anyway, I don't want to put you off, and I don't want to confuse you with this. So talk to your academic tutor about this journey. And again, talk to either of us. So there's Shelka, Uchi and I, and we are more than happy to speak with you. You can find me on Wednesdays in the C building. So if you email me, I tell you where and when, and then we can have a heart-to-heart and a chat about it. Now, everybody can apply. I said this, you have to have 2-1 or first. How and when to apply. So we have 3 intakes every year, September, January, and May. Home students, you should apply in July to start in September, apply in November to start in January. So say 6 to 8 weeks before the start date. For home students, it's relatively simple to go through the admissions process. International students, because you have to have an unconditional offer from the university, it takes longer, 10 weeks, we say. It's not because we are slow, it's the Home Office, and depending on what you're studying, it depends on whether you have HECOS codes, you know, and want to build explosives, you know, then they get really, really nervous. So it takes a longer period of time for international students than home students. We expect you to prepare a proposal, and there you definitely have the edge because you're one of us already. So I suggest you speak with your preferred supervisor, put their name on the application form, and run the proposal past them. We also have a guide to writing a proposal, what we are expecting a proposal to look like. You can ask one of us to send that to you, and then you just follow that. It doesn't have to be long, but it should be focused, and it should be supported with, you know, evidence that you know about academic writing skills, how to reference, and how to put together a coherent report. So that's basically what we look at. And then there's a link if you want to apply, how to do that. It's all online. Now, money. Let's talk about how much it costs. So home students pay about £5,000 per year for 3 years. You don't pay in the 4th year. You get a 20% discount. That makes Salford very competitive indeed. You know, I mean, go and shop around, I dare you. International student fees are yearly £16,000. So that's where usually the international students are starting to get really dejected. And I feel compelled to explain why that is more than £10,000 more. So home students are supported by the government. They're subsidied. Every student is subsidied by the government. International students are not. So each seat that you're taking is subsidized by the government, but not if you're from a different government. And that's why you need to see whether you can find a scholarship in your home country. So we have quite a lot of Nigerian students with scholarships, so that they are quite successful. But it's really difficult for me to give guidance if you're from a country that I don't know. I'm from Germany. I can tell you where to go in Germany to find scholarships, but that doesn't help you. You have a lot of German colleagues, but not students. I don't know why. So I would say then shop around and have a look at in your home country what there is in terms of PhD or MPhil scholarships. The only ones I can recommend are those. The university has a brand new widening participation scholarship for home students. Widening participation means you are the first person in your family to be at university and on that level. You are from a minority, girls, yes, in acoustics. You're unfortunately a minority, let's change that. If you are, if your cultural background is not represented often in your field. So there's all sorts of links you can follow to see whether you apply for the widening of participation. And even if you don't, I dare you, apply. You never know. You only know what happens if you apply. So I always would suggest that anybody who wants to do it, does it. If nothing else, you've written a good proposal that you can then apply to other scholarships with. You know, so it's not work in vain. So there is a doctoral loan if you want to go that route. So that's a bank loan, a commercial bank loan, has to be repaid. I don't know. I mean, I say it exists. I wouldn't have done it personally. If I was very lucky and privileged, I had a scholarship. I wouldn't add a doctoral loan to my student loan. Bill is nodding. I don't think that's a good idea, because then you end up, you could have bought a house for that, I think, at the end, depending where. So I try to get a scholarship first. I would say that. I'm not sure if I would recommend it. It would scare me personally. So you can The other thing that you could do is there is about 70 projects live on the website Find a PhD. The link is there from our school. Most of them are from our school. If there's a project that sparks your fancy, contact the tutor and discuss with them an opportunity to apply for scholarship. We have a Northwestern Consortium of universities. They have a scholarship every year. So there are options to get scholarships or bursaries, at least, or fee waivers, which makes a lot of difference. So it's easier when you have somebody to talk about the project you're doing. International students, I recommend to have a look whether you're eligible to apply for Commonwealth scholarship. So it has to be, you have to come from a country that used to be part of the Commonwealth, like India, Pakistan, some of the Middle Eastern countries, some of the African countries. Do you have a question? Okay. So we have good success with that. So there's a link there as well. You can have a look whether you're eligible or not for that. And most of our PGRs work part-time. Now, I would always suggest you work a little bit, but being wise what you do. So of course you can go work in retail or drive an Uber and these kind of things, but try to consider kind of working in acoustics somewhere. You know, talk to your tutors. Is there something available within your field of study that is much more effective if you can make that happen than, you know, just working because you need to pay the rent? I mean, I don't want to sound dismissive or flippant, but try to be strategic with that. You know, I'm not quite sure what opportunities there are. Do you have demonstrators, Bill?
Yeah.
So I would suggest trying that in the first instance, you know, because it's very easy to get sidetracked, and you should really try to focus and prioritize your studies in these 3 years, because it only sounds like a long time. It really isn't. And it's really a shame if you prioritize the wrong things at the wrong time, and then, you know, there is then stress and all sorts of things at the end, and you wonder. Have a look at Unitemps as well. There's a link there to see what kinds of jobs Unitemps, it's a university temp agency, and what kind of income they offer. There might be some opportunities there as well. And that is really me. So yeah, 46 minutes, timed well. So here are our faces and our email addresses. So there's Ucho Bonda, she's admissions and recruitment PGR director. If you have any questions about admissions recruitment, drop her a line. And Jelka, she's looking at all the training that we all, and I do the rest. If you email me, please don't be cross if it takes me the best part of a week to get back to you. If I'm not responding to you after a week, just send the same email again. Apologies. I'm swamped most of the time. So again, thank you for having me.
Okay, so second half of the session. Welcome back, everyone. More specific stuff about acoustics. A reminder for you folks online, I'm Bill Davis. I'm one of the professors of acoustics chairing this session. I'll do 5 minutes max on sort of general features of Acoustics Research Centre at Salford, and then we'll do round robin of supervisors and their particular areas. Okay, so a few bits of information. We've been doing acoustics at Salford for quite a long time, actually since before the place was a university. I mean, numbers kind of vary a bit, but there are roughly 12 sort of full-time, tenured, if you like, research active academic staff here, supervise an unusually large complement of commercial staff in the acoustics labs, several of whom have PhDs, 10 postdocs active on various research projects. So those are full-time researchers who already have PhDs and are working on various research projects. Some of those people get involved in supervising research students. And the vaguest figure, 20+ research students. It's incredibly difficult to count research students. I don't know, I think it appear and disappear, but anyway, 20 or so PhD, Masters by Research students. Significant amount of grant income. We're one of the most successful bits of the university. So it's quite a busy area. I mean, as I think most people on this call probably know, we have significant facilities for acoustics research. We're one of the best university departments in the world in terms of that. We're getting a new building built for us on campus, which will have even better facilities, but I'm not going to sell that too hard because they haven't actually started digging the ground yet, so I'm not going to promise anything with that. We cover a broad range of topics in acoustics research, organised here into two main themes. The first one, acoustics for health, well-being and accessibility. So I'm not going to read those bullet points out. My colleagues will talk to a few of these in a moment. And the other area, industrial acoustics. So pretty much most of the stuff we do can be grouped under one of those two headings. Okay, round robin. Well, I thought I might as well stick me on first. Chair's privilege, also, so I don't have to keep getting up and sitting down. That's getting harder as my knees get older. Anyway, here's some images sort of on here relating to some of the stuff that I do. There's James Woodcock there, who's a postdoc who works with me, and that's an eye tracking device in front of him, and the graph below is an example of the kind of information that comes out of that eye tracker. So it's pupil diameter measured over a function of time in response to sound. I've got various kind of research interests, oral diversity, so individual differences in how people hear and respond to sound. I'm particularly interested in autistic people in that respect. Soundscape, human response to complex sound environments. Psychoacoustics, which is getting broader and broader and broader here. But also I do a bit of stuff in room acoustics and bioacoustics. There's an advert on the bottom for something that's coming up. We've just announced substantial funding, £2.6 million to fund PhDs specifically in oral diversity. We'll be advertising those specifically soon, and then having a webinar especially on that topic, similar to this, but on Thursday, 22nd February. I don't have the adverts ready for that yet, but they will be coming up very soon. Okay, right, I'm now going to hand over. Oh, no, I'm not going to hand over to. I'm going to busk some slides from my colleague Josh Meggitt, whom I know is teaching at the moment. Okay, what did Josh tell me to say about this? He said, Bill, remember two words. He said vibro-acoustics and automotive, which in my head I translated as vibrating cars. Okay, so Josh does research in structural dynamics and is young and cool enough to actually have animations in his PowerPoint slide. That's very impressive. So he does things like virtual acoustic prototypes, where you make computational models of vibroacoustic systems, which are realistic enough so that you can listen to them and sort of combine experiment and simulation in order to predict how a device is going to behave and how it's going to sound. So perhaps unsurprisingly, Josh works quite a lot with industry on things ranging in size from aircraft to, I don't know, what do Dyson make? Fans and hoovers. And he hits things with hammers quite a lot as well. Apparently you can learn quite a lot by hitting something with a hammer in his field. So there we go. So if that appeals to you, contact Josh. Another one I think on busking. I don't think Olga is joining the call. I don't think we're expecting Olga. Colleagues, anyone? No. Okay. An even more challenging busks though. So Olga is. I mean, if the group has a theoretician, then that's Olga. So Olga does physical acoustics. And is particularly associated with advances in metamaterials. Now I'm really going to embarrass myself here. So a metamaterial is a structure that has acoustic properties which are surprising for its size. So, for example, it interacts with sound waves at wavelengths which you wouldn't expect given the size and structural properties of the material. And so these materials can be designed to have various kinds of properties. So you can do things like have some desired scattering and reflection and absorption properties. So although a lot of that's quite theoretical, some of it gets spun out into surprisingly practical things. So some of Olga's work was instrumental in the technology behind a company called Carbon Air, which makes kind of active dampers that are used in vehicles. Right, finally I can stop busking. My colleague Duncan will come up.
Thanks, Bill. Hello, so I'm Duncan. I'm a senior lecturer in the Research Centre, and my interest is really that I'm a failed musician. So this might make me slightly the black sheep of the Acoustics Research Group. Most of my work is about trying to understand music and either give us new ways to work with music or new ways to respond to music. So the stuff you see on the board is actually similar to some of Bill's work, I think, where we're using devices to measure how people are reacting to sound, but also using that information to give us new toys to play with sound at the other end. Maybe you'll recognise that picture on the left. That's Amy Williams, no relation. She was an Olympian who did that thing where you strap yourself to a board and go flying down the snow. I think it's called the skeleton or the skull or something. She was the host on the Gadget Show, and she's demoing a tool where we use the brain cap to select music in response to her current emotional state. So this would be something that you maybe pitch to a Spotify nowadays. The other thing that I do that's perhaps a little bit different to most people in the group is I'm also interested in sound for games. This book I wrote with a video game designer from Disney. In the bottom left there, we've got some VR game and about how we could link those things together. So there's a slight idea that maybe the sound in games could change based on how you're feeling. So maybe you imagine a horror game and you're scared of spiders and it shows you a spider and that gets a very nice scary response. We show you more spiders until we've gone a bit too far. So if you're interested in perhaps the slightly more creative applications of sound and music or understanding your responses to those things, I'd love to hear from you. I'll give you one quick example of a student who we supervised who just graduated this winter, Chris Corradine. By day, he's an ACOM acoustic consultant. By night, his Masters in Research project was about designing an algorithm to automatically generate music. And you can look at his YouTube channel and hear what he built. It's surprisingly, actually sounds good. He's a talented guy. That's it from me, I think.
Space.
Oh, space. Sorry, Bill. Get the prof up to press the space bar. There we go.
You've let me tune on the piano, I think, on there.
It does, yeah. Yeah, we all need walk-on music. So next year, walk-on music is going to be the priority. So I'm Trevor Cox, I'm Professor of Acoustics here, and I direct the Research Institute. And I've been doing research for, I don't know, what is it, 3 decades or so. So I've done a lot of different areas of research. I have lots of different interests, but what they tie together is usually using computers in some way, either using numerical modelling or using machine learning, trying to understand how the humans respond to sound, whether that's music, speech, or noise, or other stuff, and then sort of kind of bring those two bits together to try and make things sound better, I guess, is to sort of crude what we do. So I started off in architectural acoustics, and still have an interest there. You'll see in the bottom right, I've got a picture of a strange architectural acoustic space at Stonehenge. I'll leave Bruno to pitch archaeoacoustics to you later on, but understanding the sound from the past is something I've done research on. A lot of my research at the moment, top left-hand corner, is about hearing aids. So we have 2 major projects which are running machine learning challenges to improve hearing aid sound. So one's on music, it's called Cadenza, and one's on speech called Clarity. You can look them up. And there's some really interesting things come out of that, because I think we don't really understand what people like this actually want out of music and want out of speech. It's becoming more and more apparent as the project goes on. So we have these fancy machine learning processes which can tweak music and do wonderful things with it. Actually, what do you want it to sound like in the end? We were discussing lyric intelligibility on Teams just a moment ago. I mean, do you want lyrics to be completely intelligible, partly intelligible? And that depends on music and genre and all sorts of things. So yeah, those sort of projects, top left, right-hand corner is kind of where I started off on this, is metamaterials, but you've already mentioned Olga and metamaterials, but we do work on metamaterials. There's a metadiffuser, which is what I kind of started off with. And I think the other area I've done a lot of work in is on areas of audio, surround sound, but I think other colleagues are probably even more expert on that than I am. That's me. Cheers. Talking about accessible sound and audio.
Good cue. Thanks. So I'm Ben Shirley. I'm an associate professor here in audio technology, so I'm very much from the audio side of things. My interest is mainly in accessible applications of audio and in personalisation of audio media. So started off looking at how we can make TV better for people with hearing impairments, carried on looking at helping people with visual impairments, did some work on helping people with dementia, and then all these next generation audio formats came in, like MPEG-H, Dolby Atmos, where we can start remixing the sound of the person's home based on their profile and based on what their needs are. So carried on working with companies like Fraunhofer and Dolby, organisations like the Royal National Institute for Deaf People, RNIB, and other people, and looking at a number of different reasons for personalising audio. It might be for accessibility, and that's where I started off doing. It might be for more engagement. It might just be for entertainment. So it might be because you want to hear the biased football commentator for your football team, or you want to be in the home crowd or the away crowd in a football game, something like that. And this is kind of broadened out now beyond broadcast into kind of virtual reality, augmented reality applications, both for kind of entertainment and engagement, but also for things like wayfinding for people who are visually impaired and so on. Okay, I think I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Bill, for organizing. So yeah, I'm going to talk about some of the research I'm doing and interested in doing. So my main interest at the moment is on perception-driven engineering, which is basically trying to link the human factors with engineering problems. So we are trying to embed how people respond to sound when we are designing a system, and that could be an aircraft, or could be a heat pump. I'm also interested in psychoacoustics and analyzation, mainly as methods to deliver this perception-driven engineering. Also, I do a little bit of experimental air acoustics, mainly focus on drone noise, environmental noise, and I'm quite keen on starting working on data-driven modeling using some machine learning techniques. So what you have here in my slide is a summary of all this work that we have done. So on the top left corner, we have some experimental setup we have developed at Salford, where we can measure propeller noise at different emission angles. We can connect that acoustic signals with operating conditions of the propeller in the sense of RPM, thrust, etc. And we developed that as part of a project where we were designing or helping to design an electric propulsion system for regional aviation. Connected to the more psychoacoustics realization. So here you have a flow diagram on the top of the slide. You have a flow diagram indicating our approach to synthesize or simulate or synthesize signals for drone noise. It's quite a challenging process. We are doing that by the splitting, so by gathering signals under very controlled conditions, under hovering operations, and then splitting the broadband and tonal noise. And once we have that characterized, we can resynthesize or resimulate the drone operation under different conditions or different position, and then we can repropagate and have a sound signal on the ground. By perception-driven engineering, also I mean this what we do here in this diagram of the center of the slide, where you can find advanced ratio, which is magnitude used usually in aerodynamics, and tonality, which is one of the most prominent features making a sound to be annoying. So this is work I've been doing with a postdoc, and what we are trying to see is what are the optimal places, or trying to find the optimum for maximum aerodynamic performance while keeping minimum the noise annoyance. Of course, when we are doing this work, we are going from the experimental acoustics, although we do a little bit of noise modeling, to understanding how people respond to the noise we present. And this is what you have at the right-hand side of my slide on the bottom. So we have facilities and expertise to simulate a highly immersive scenarios with and without virtual reality, where we can investigate how people respond to noise. So we kind of close the cycle, and we can influence design by understanding how people perceive to the noise made by these different vehicles, different designs. So that's my interest, and if anyone is interested on these topics, get in touch. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Bruno Fazenda. I'm a reader in acoustics, and I think one of the things I see about my research is that it tends to overlap quite a lot with many of my colleagues. And so the slide tries to kind of pull together all of these things. My background is in architectural acoustics and psychoacoustics. So I'm mainly interested into how a situation, a room, a piece of technology, a piece of music impacts on our well-being and our perception. And kind of through that, I've been involved in a number of projects. So Trevor mentioned Stonehenge. I've done some work in this area called Acoustics, which is where we look at the sound of ancient monuments, either through simulation, scale modeling, or actual measurements on site. And then we try and glean what sort of use might our ancient ancestors have had in that space. And we do that through acoustic measurements, statistical analysis, and obviously working together with archaeologists and anthropologists to help us in that. But I've also done a number of projects in psychoacoustics where we look at sound quality. At the moment, I'm involved with Trevor on the Cadenza project, where we look at sound quality for people with hearing disabilities. and we try to understand how the experience of listening to music with a hearing disability is, so that we can then improve that experience. I've also done bits of work in virtual reality and how we interact with environments where we are immersed in sound, and we're kind of interacting with both visual and audio objects in there. We've got a number of PhD students. Again, you know, it's always in collaboration with colleagues like Trevor, Duncan, Bill. So it's really a mix of different projects that I can do. So if you're interested in any of that, give me a ring or send me an email.
Hi, yeah, I'm Rebecca Voss, and I'm one of the University Fellows in the Acoustics Research Centre now. My interests are in hearing aids for singing. So I'm also involved in the Cadenza project, along with Bruno and Trevor and other people as well, looking at audio quality for hearing aids. But yeah, I think I'm the only person interested in singing specifically. So yeah, I'm interested in how we can use hearing aids for singing, what the problem is faced by people who want to sing, who have a hearing aid, and understanding exactly what that is, and how we can fix it, hopefully. And this obviously ties in for kind of lots of well-being around that, understanding how it's important for well-being and sort of how it affects the aging population as well. So yeah, that's what I'm interested in. I have only recently started, so I've not got a massive amount to say yet, but yeah, any interest in that, drop me an email.
That's great. Thanks very much, Becky. Okay, and John on the call yet. I know he had a tricky timetable this afternoon. He was going to join on Teams. I don't see him. Okay. I'll busk to John. Okay, so John, I mean, as his slide indicates, does a lot of things. I think of John like as foremost as a computational acoustics expert. I mean, perhaps particularly in the field of room acoustics simulation, but is also, as the slide evidences, interested in electroacoustics, loudspeakers and microphones, and a particular kind of intriguing setup. Here, John's got a fairly new interest in very high intensity sound reproduction. So there's some poor little device in here is being in the middle of this unusual array of PA systems is being subjected to sound pressure levels, well, very high sound pressure levels. I can't remember the exact figure. It was about 140 dB or something like that. They go up to. The purpose is that of doing that high intensity acoustic testing is, I gather, that it's an efficient way to simulate what happens to certain mechanical systems under significant amounts of certain kinds of turbulent vibrational stress, and in particular the kind of things that satellites and satellite components have as they are launched through the Earth's atmosphere. So although that sounds like an incredibly niche application, it turns out that blasting these things with very high intensity sound is an efficient way to simulate whether or not they're going to survive being launched off into space or not. And so John's got interest from various collaborators who actually do launch satellite components into space. So yeah, and a bunch of other things, including material characterization and developing microphone and loudspeaker arrays there. Okay, so I think we've arrived yet again at a little bit more time for questions. So if anybody in the room or online has specific